Are you properly monitoring Argo CD? What is the community building in Argo Project Labs? And we take on a community question about repo server CPU being out of control, all on today's episode of Argo Unpacked. Welcome to another fun-filled, wonderful episode. We have a banger of an episode today. We're going to have some great people on. Christian's going to be joining, Yevgeny, Revital, the whole crew. But before that, by popular demand, we're going to do something special. Tip of the week. All right, so we've got an Argo tip of the week before we jump in with the crew and we bring them all in. Today's tip is super simple. Start monitoring Argo CD. It's crazy how many people don't do it. You deploy Argo CD, but do you set up the Prometheus metrics? Do you set up the Grafana dashboard? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you just want to look at the resources inside of the Argo CD dashboard. Totally get it. But you got to set up the Grafana dashboard. It's so useful. It's so important, especially if you're serious about using Argo CD within your organization. If you have a whole bunch of people using this, you're relying on it, and you don't have that set up, what are you doing? Go do it right now. This is a super simple tip, okay? It's just exhorting you. Just go and set up the Prometheus metrics, set up the Grafana dashboard. It's going to give you insights into what's happening with Argo CD under the hood. Is there a big queue depth where maybe it's taking a long time for applications to get synced? Do you have a ton of applications that are out of sync? Do you have CPU issues? Is it getting pinned? Is there tons of memory usage? All that stuff is really visible in the Grafana dashboard, and it's all linked in the documentation, in the Argo documentation. We have all this stuff. And so if you ever run into a situation where like, oh, Argo is not responding, why is that? Well, if you look on the Grafana dashboard, you should have a really good idea exactly why Argo is not responding. And it's going to narrow down really quickly what's going on. We even added just a couple versions ago, and I think it was 2.14, maybe it was 3.0, but we actually added metrics for stuff like Git calls, Git API calls. So you can even see how you're doing against the Git API. Maybe you just installed this cool new application set with a Git generator, and maybe you misconfigured a few things, and suddenly you have, 10,000 API requests being made per day to the GitHub API server, and you're starting to wonder why applications can't sync because they can't get what's going on. Well, it'll be a pretty good clue that your API requests are out of control. So the tip of the week, really simple. Lots of times we go complex on these things, but it's good to be simple. Enable metrics, install the Grafana dashboard, make sure that you have access to it, make sure you can look at it easily, and actually look at it every once in a while. It's so valuable. So your Argo tip of the week, use Grafana. It's awesome. All right. With that, let me bring in our panel. First, adding my co-host, Ravital. Thanks for setting everything up. People don't know Ravital does all the work for Argo Unpacked. I just show up. But Ravital makes it all happen and organizes the whole thing. So thank you, Ravital. We're also joining next to Ravital is Yevgeny. Yevgeny is one of our Argo maintainers and joined Octopus last year and has been really effective at finding the craziest issues with the deepest, weirdest root causes in the Argo project. We had a really wacky bug that was in a pre-release version of Argo CD that everybody was stumped on. And it turned out that it was because the Go Git library had a bug in it that was introduced, and nobody could figure it out except Yevgeny. So thank you, Yevgeny. Sometimes people in English say Eugene. I think you said you're fine with either. So thanks for joining. And finally, Christian Hernandez, friend of the show. Right. Way back to the day when we used to do GitOps the Planet. Now we're Argo Unpacked. We did a little bit different show, but Christian, a giant in the space, and helped with the GitOps helped create the GitOps principles back in the day. Been a huge Argo contributor, ArgoCon co-chair with me, and also wrote a book about Argo. So yeah, really, really awesome. So thanks for coming, Christian, and joining in.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's always fun. It's always fun to talk with fellow Argonauts, I guess. It's always we should speak more often than just KubeCon and ArgoCon, because it's always cool to have the conversations with fellow Argonauts for sure.
Absolutely.
And so, speaking of ArgoCon and KubeCon, I think that this is the last show before KubeCon, ArgoCon Amsterdam, and we're going to have so many amazing sessions. I've started to create some YouTube shorts that I'm sharing with the community. So stay tuned and watch those shorts, because they will help you decide to which talk you should be going to.
Yeah, perfect. And good reminder too, I am already seeing some comments and questions coming in. This one over LinkedIn. But as you're watching today's show, be sure to invite your friends, grab some popcorn. It's best enjoyed with friends. But make your comments if you like what we're saying. Tell us if you think it's dumb. Tell us if you have any questions. Bring them up.
If
And
you have any topics you would like to address, we can
Yeah.
also do that.
especially for future episodes, we can always do deep dives later on those. And don't forget to like and subscribe and all that jazz. But in today's episode, we have our main topic is really focused around Argo Project Labs, which we'll get into. But we also do have a quandary from the community where somebody's repo server is out of control that I thought it would be fun for us to try to kind of live review and react to and see if we can maybe give some advice to this poor Redditor. And of course, we'll take your questions from the audience. So first off, we should probably introduce Argo Project Labs. And Christian, you're very familiar with it. So do you want to introduce the labs concept of what we're doing, why we do it that way?
Yeah. So I think the best way to talk about labs is to not talk about it initially. Is to is to actually define what are the graduated Argo projects, right? So like we say Argo, a lot of people assume we mean CD. A lot of people, when in the workflows, you say Argo, they assume you mean workflows, right? But actually Argo is 4 asterisk, maybe 5, if you want to consider the Helm one, projects, right? There's Argo CD, there's Argo events, there's Argo rollouts, and there's Argo workflows. Argo Helm is the way to deploy. That's also technically officially part of the project, right? But those are like the main things that happen, right? Those are the main projects when you talk about Argo, right? And so in order to add some really kind of like niceties around the ecosystem without like actually like putting it into the Argo project, right? There is this concept of like Argo Project Labs, right? So like Argo Project Labs is things that are adjacent to the Argo project, right? That aren't necessarily, either graduated or like officially like supported. And when I say not necessarily, there are projects that are like actively coded and maintained, right? So like I think that's where like a lot of the by like actual like by Intuit or by like Red Hat, Octopus has a few things there as well. So so there are things that are quote unquote like supported and actively maintained, but not everything is, right? It's not necessarily right. I think we just retired the Vault plugin, right, from the Argo CD Vault plugin. I think that's been recent, just because like I don't think anyone has touched it for like over a year or anything like that.
Yeah, and we've kind of come out with official guidance to basically not.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we say, well, don't use that. We should probably retire that. So I think really like from a high level, I always say Argo Project Labs is like adjacent projects that either help or extend the functionality of kind of like, I want to say, I guess, these core tool sets that we have.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
How much stability do we need to expect from a lab project?
None.
See, none. So,
None
well, I mean, and that's the thing. I think someone like actually asked the other day, which I think I'm like, oh, it's very topical because I'm about to jump on this, the Argo Unpacked. Say, oh, I want to contribute to this Argo Project Labs. Like, can someone help me? And I'm like, well, like not necessarily someone from the project. Like you just like go to the repo and see who's contributing to it and reach out to them, right? Like there's whereas like in the Argo project, there's like a ladder, right? There's a way to be like a on the path to a maintainer, right?
Contributor, like reviewer, approver, lead. We have all these different roles. And we have like a CNCF kind of affiliation. We have CNCF guidelines we need to follow.
Exactly.
But the labs are kind of the wild, wild west. I mean, people can. Really the only rule for an Argo Project Labs project is it needs to be sponsored by an Argo maintainer. So you need somebody from the Argo project to basically be like, yeah, that sounds like a cool project. Let's create this sandbox space where you can work. And so there are repos in there that haven't been touched in a long time. There are repos in there that are started, and there's a flurry of activity, and then they're abandoned. And then we also have the rare project that becomes a mainstream part of Argo. So application sets started in Argo Project Labs. And once it became really popular and effective, people were like, okay, let's bring this. Everybody that installs Argo CD, the first thing they do is they go and add this additional labs project. Let's make it an official part of the Argo CD and support it officially.
Okay, but not every project that is part of the Argo CD was prior to becoming as part of Argo CD was a project lab, right?
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the direction.
Yeah, it depends on the thing, right? So, for example, Hydrator, which is a set of features that Michael and Zach, especially from Intuit, have worked a ton on. That's not been a labs project because all of the work that's done on Hydrator is like core to the engine of Argo CD. There's not really a way that you could have done that project as a labs project that somebody could have installed side by side. So in order for, and we're talking mostly about Argo CD, but for any Argo project, in order for a labs project to exist, it needs to be able to be somewhat standalone, or it needs to be able to be maintained separately from Argo itself.
And when you say to be maintained, does it have the same official process of I want to contribute to this project lab? Do I need to go through? An approver needs to approve my changes if I would like to contribute them?
Whoever owns the repo, right? So the labs project is sponsored by an Argo maintainer who says, hey, I think this is worthwhile for this to be part of the Argo ecosystem to go start working on this. But usually the person that owns that repository is not a maintainer. There's somebody that it could be, but usually there's somebody that's not a maintainer that's creating something within the community. And this creates kind of a neutral space where they can work. Now it's even more interesting than that because everything within the Argo project needs to follow CNCF guidelines, which means we have to follow certain licensing rules, certain code of conduct restrictions, all these kinds of things. And they're pretty lightweight. I mean, they're not difficult, onerous things, but there is assignment of ownership, right? So if it's in the Argo project, it is owned by the CNCF. Now it's open source and you can take the license, you can do stuff, but Argo Project Labs is not owned by the CNCF. It's actually kept separate. So if you wanted to work on a project where you want to be able to change the license, or like you're experimenting and maybe you don't want to have it eventually go into the CNCF, you could totally do that inside of Labs and have it be its own thing. And you could set up different licensing or whatever. So you have just a lot more flexibility there to do kind of anything you want. But the flip side of that, of course, is that as a user, like you pointed out, like, oh, what level of stability should I expect? And it's like, you shouldn't, you should consider it basically like a random repository that exists on the internet that an Argo maintainer said, that looks cool, and gave a thumbs up to. It doesn't mean that it even has like, security review or any of those kinds of things. Within the Argo project, we treat that stuff super seriously, right? Like we have like a SIG security. We have, we actually Yevgeny just joined SIG security, and we were like, we did a background check on Yevgeny that he can join our SIG security. He has, people to vouch for him. He's, we did a whole thing. So we take that stuff super seriously, but with Labs, it's like, hey, whatever you want to do, go create a project and have fun.
Like personal project with a blessing.
Yeah, personal project with a blessing. So Yevgeny, actually, this is a good place to bring you in. You contributed a really important project to Project Labs that has been growing in popularity. Do you want to introduce your project and then maybe some of the background of how it ended up in Project Labs?
Yep. So I'm maintaining, trying to bring up a project that called Monorepo Controller. So it's just kind of projects. It's playground to solve some specific problem with Argo CD. currently Argo CD Argo CD doesn't know, cannot.
I can help you out
keep
here. I can help you out here if you want.
It's cannot keep accurate history of commits that reflects changes changes of the specific applications. Application is synchronized to the last commit that it sees, and it can keep it's synchronized from time to time, each 3 minutes or something, and it can skip commits that actually changed this specific application. So this problem is most known for big monorepos, because it's such repos changed all the time, and applications get commits gets updated on each commit of the repository, and users are getting just getting stream of bogus notifications that are not related to anything. So this project is about to solve this problem. So essentially, we hope someday to bring this when it's mature, it's works good. When we have some plan to bring it back to Argo CD, we hope to bring it back. It's our ultimate goal. It's not this project isn't going to be something like Argo CD image updater or application set controller. It's just playground for components of Argo CD.
Yeah, and I think with monorepo controller specifically, because you brought up that this is a problem that a lot of people deal with, where the commits, the commit associated with the sync is incorrect to the changes that are made, and it can cause confusion with users. Part of the reason that I think that we didn't bring it directly into the Argo project is because the best way to solve it was with a separate controller, and it is computationally expensive because you need to go through and review Git history and then match up like where the changes are. And so because of that, it felt like it made more sense to do as an optional labs project that people can install separately. And since launching it, we've had adoption. I mean, we actually, this is one that we had customers at Octopus Deploy using for about a year before we started the work of bringing into the community. And I think I would like to see eventually this one probably make its way into the Argo project, because I think enough people have this as an issue that they need it. But and we do want to bring that kind of high level of support and care. But this is also a good example where, like, when you look at these different projects, and there's a couple of great ones. MCP server, which is being maintained primarily by the folks, the maintainers from at Acuity, the monorepo controller by Octopus Deploy. Those are ones where you can kind of look at it and you'll be like, okay, like I can see that these are like maintainer led projects. So I'm going to expect a little bit more, support and adoption and activity. But I think with monorepo controller, Evgeny, is that version like 1.0 yet, or is it close?
It's 0.005. It's just beginning.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would
it's
consider
still
it production ready, but there are people that use it.
Yeah.
But just as a playground, right?
It's
not part of production, actually.
It depends. It depends. Some people can use it for production. I hope soon we'll make it more production ready with.
We definitely have users using it in production, and as far as like risk profile goes, you're going to see some increase resource usage, that kind of thing. But it's generally like a pretty safe, in my mind, kind of adoption to do. So, but yeah, that's a good example of a labs project that may eventually make its way in. We'll see. You know, if maybe there's not that many people in the community that need it, but we've seen it from certainly people that are large Argo instances. They have these large model repos. They have a lot of activities. So that's an example. Christian, you brought up the one that we just retired. That was the Vault plugin that kind of did an anti-pattern. There's another one. I started one like a year ago that was just CMP plugin examples for Argo CD, and I put a couple of in there. Not necessarily good idea ones, but just like example code. And that's been a repo that I've seen people reference when they're building CMPs, and they're like, oh, okay, like cool. Here's something that just has some examples, and it has this little bit of association with the Argo project where it's not just a random repository. So what would we advise people that are interested in potentially contributing a labs project? Maybe they've got a great idea. What would we tell them to do, Christian?
So probably you alluded to a little bit in the beginning, but like getting someone to sponsor it, right? Like basically having a maintainer. So like really step one is would be to, you know, join the community, right? Like get on either like, you know, GitHub, Slack, or, you know, join the calls. But you know, reach out to a maintainer and saying, hey, depending on what you're doing, right? Like if you're doing something like for rollouts, right? Maybe you'll reach out maybe like to Zach. If you're doing for something for like CD, you know, I don't want to bombard Michael Crenshaw, but like someone in the CD community, right? It could be any maintainer to sponsor, right? Like essentially that is like step one, is like, hey, you know, community building, right? Like talk with someone, that maintainer, hey, I have this idea, you know, I have some, you know, maybe you already have a repo or something. It's like, hey, I have this idea, I want to put it in labs, so that way it can have, you know, bigger eyes, whatever the reason may be, and do that, right? So that's step one, right? And step two is really there at that point, is like procedural, right? Like, hey, you file out an issue saying, hey, I want an Argo Project Labs for, you know, XYZ, you know, give me a repo sort of thing, right? And, you know, here's my sponsor. I think really that's like entry point is, you know, most of the work is just getting someone to sponsor you there.
Yeah, it's not that hard. I mean, it's just even just to present it in a meeting, you know, the contributor experience meeting, or like the monthly Argo CD meetings, or if it's Argo CD, if it's Argo Workflows, do the Workflows meeting. But just to generate interest in it. And again, you can bring whatever license you want. You can have it be, you know, experimentation or whatever. I did have somebody the other day, I had one of our customers reached out, and they were like, hey, I wanted to get a roadmap update for one of these labs projects. Can you tell us what the roadmap is? And I was like, we barely have a roadmap for Argo CD, let alone do these labs projects have roadmaps. But there is some cool experimentation in there. Maybe some other projects we could highlight. Argo CD Agent, which is kind of led by Jan from
Red Hat. Yeah.
Red Hat, yeah, where this is basically a project that lets you deploy components of Argo CD on a remote cluster, and then they still work off of a centralized Argo CD via a network tunnel. That's a cool project. There's another one that Gerald Nunn was working on, that's an Argo CD AI assistant. It's essentially a browser plugin that lets you connect to the Argo CD MCP server along with a Kubernetes MCP and a GitHub MCP, and you can give it stuff to do. But it's a pretty experimental project at this point. He's looking for more contributors, and also Gerald's an Argo maintainer. Like these are both those examples are maintainer-led labs projects. But you could definitely see if any of those get more popular, that we could say like, oh, maybe we need to have an assistant that ships with Argo CD, and that will be in like, maybe we'll do that for 4.0. We'll get an assistant in here, you know. Could certainly see those kinds of use cases coming in.
No, for sure, and I think you touched on an interesting topic. I think also one misconception people have about labs is that it's an incubation area, and it's not necessarily an incubation area, right? Like it's not like there's no, you land in labs first and then we'll move you over. It's just things just happen to move over, right? Like there's no like official process or anything like that. It's like, oh, how do I, go from labs? What's the graduation process? Like, well, there really isn't one because there's no expectation, right? That's not the expectation. That's not the expectation, and also that's not the reason for labs, right? It's not an incubation area either. So I think that's another thing that folks think. Like you said, we happen to move things out of it, but that's not the purpose of it, right? Like, yes, it does happen, but there's no like official process. I think people, that's another like misconception, I think.
Is there a TTL for a project in the labs? I mean, project that exists for maybe too long and no one has updated the project, or any restriction there for those projects?
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'm like gonna go.
There should be. No, there isn't.
We need to define a TTL for those projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that there is. I think because there are some repos in there that have been stale for like several years now. So you just have to look at them. The most popular project is probably Argo CD Image Updater.
Yeah.
That one's very popular.
Another one. Yeah, we didn't even touch on that one. I think that's like the most popular one. I think that a lot of people use that.
Argo CD Autopilot is very popular, moderately popular, less popular than Image Updater. Argo CD Operator, that is an operator for deploying Argo CD instances. That one's reasonably popular. But the Helm project, actually, the Argo Helm project, I don't remember if it started as a labs project, but it wasn't. The Helm charts were not the official distribution of Argo CD for a long time. And then we brought them in and basically said, like, hey, this is the way that 80% of the community is using it. We better make it official and have it be supported in an official kind of way.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of fun repositories in there, and there's always new ones. There's a new one that I haven't really looked too much at. It's not new, I'm sorry. But Argo Rollouts Manager. It's like a Kubernetes operator for Argo rollouts to deploy and manage that one. It's not new, but it is actively maintained. So yeah, there's a couple of them. And if you have any ideas, you can bring them in and start deploying them. So
but that's my question. Let's say I have an idea. How do I decide whether it should be part of the Argo, one of those projects, let's say Argo CD project, or should it be in the project lab?
I mean, if it involves modifying like the Argo CD binary, then you probably want to have it in Argo CD and you want to write a proposal. We have had several times where people bring those kind of proposals and we say, hey, this actually sounds like a better labs project. Go see if you can do it that way.
I see.
So if you think it'll fit in, you write a proposal and you'll get feedback on it from there. And then if you think it's something that can reasonably be done without modifying Argo CD or with minimal modifications of Argo CD, then a lab project. And it's not. Yeah, and if you were like, oh, I want to build this cool labs project, but it requires this additional API from Argo CD, that's totally reasonable, right? You could be like, hey, I want to add this API in so that I can build this labs project. That would be something that you would do through the normal proposal, writing that, contributing it process. But there's no reason to, if you can get away without doing it in Argo CD, then it's ideal that you maybe would, especially if it's experimental, especially if there's that aspect of like, right, application sets, very experimental when they first came out, building that API, updating it regularly, and then it became something that became stabilized and came into the project. So that's an obvious one. We do have a question. It's not related to Project Labs. True. And we can come back to labs and talk more about it. But Shweta asked this question actually at the top of the show. He said, He or she said. Integrating Argo with Octopus seems like a game changer for infrastructure as code. Are there any specific security best practices being covered for cross-cluster deployments? Excited for the deep dive. Now, Shweta does not work at Octopus Deploy, right, Ravital? Because I feel like this is like a seeding question. They're like, this feels like a plant. Did you plant this?
No,
Okay.
I don't know who Shweta is, so no. And
Well, Shweta,
I will check on our Slack channel.
well, Shweta, thank you for your question. Octopus does offer an integration for Argo CD specifically. So you can deploy the Argo CD gateway, which will basically allow you to see application status inside of Octopus. It will connect with GitHub or GitLab or any of your Git providers, so you can make your Git changes. You can check health status of your Argo applications. And you can also use Octopus runbooks. So if you wanted to like add a sync window to stop syncing, you can have a runbook that does that. So take advantage of Octopus. And it does connect up to any number of Argo instances. The security aspect is that each of those are going to be egress only agents. So those individual instances, they could be behind the firewall. They're going to report status to Octopus Deploy. So you get that top-down view of what's going on across all your Argo instances, all your clusters, all your apps. But in terms of specific security best practices, there may be situations where you're doing like namespace scoping or something, depending on your setup, your organization. But we should probably at some point have an episode, Ravital, that's just like here's what Octopus is doing with Argo CD. We could deep dive into it. Any other comment or question about this one that we should cover?
Shweta is not an Octopus employee.
All right, good.
Oh, you did your.
Thanks, Shweta, for bringing the question.
You did the reconnaissance there, Ravital.
It's like, I want to make sure. I was like, we don't tell people
make
to
sure.
do that. Like,
No.
Hey, go bomb the show. All right, so let's actually take maybe a break from Project Labs for a minute to do a community query that we can respond to. So this is coming to us from Reddit. Let me add this. And this is somebody that posted 2 days ago. And I'll read what they said. They said, subject is repo server CPU saturation. They say, hi, I have 1,500 applications, but 35% of them are out of sync. I have been facing intermittent CPU spikes every 15 minutes. The CPU resources constraints have been increased, and I included HPA, but the issue still persists. Please, does anyone know what steps to take to resolve the issue? So, what jumps out to us first on this one?
I think it's
Turn on monitoring.
we don't have enough details. Probably they should bring up monitoring, like you said.
Yeah.
Post the graph.
That's actually why I picked that tip this week, is because I looked at this and I was like, post your Grafana dashboard.
It's interesting that someone mentioned this. I know this was like Dan, you brought this up. I'm talking like a year ago or so. So you may have to reach back in your memory, but there is like a thing to be said about like you shouldn't put CPU limits like in Kubernetes, right? There was that one thing. You posted, there was a link, and then like that blew up the community.
The short of it is that in Kubernetes, CPU limits are like almost never needed. You set CPU requests, which is like to make sure you have a minimum. But like when your application needs to do more processing, well, if there's available CPU, just let it do it, and don't set a limit on it. So that did stand out to me for sure. When I was looking at this, I was like, what do you mean CPU allocations? Like, are you setting a limit on how much CPU Argo CD is getting? And like, why are you doing that? There's not really a reason to do that. you can make your CPU requests, I suppose, but don't set a CPU limit. So yeah, they said this constraint. Now it's possible that what they meant was just that like they didn't have HPA yet, but then they mean that like because they've added additional replicas of Argo CD that was the CPU constraint. So I don't know if they actually had a limit on it.
Yeah.
But I did think the same thing, Christian, when I saw that. The other thing that I thought was, wow, 35% are out of sync. That's a lot of your applications out of sync. And somebody in the comments said, why are they out of sync? And this is, they said, they came back, the op responded. They said they're out of sync because app owners made changes on the cluster instead of using SCM.
That's a big no-no.
That is a big no-no.
That's a big no. That's your next tip for the next.
I gotta say, I actually don't believe this. I actually think that this is suspicious. Okay, that I think what now it's totally possible. I mean, their organization is their organization; they know it far better. But when I saw this, I thought, I bet that a lot of those out of sync changes are not because people are making separate changes. They're because some controller is making changes. And the apps are not properly configured.
Yeah.
Right. So like if they had, for example, Kyverno running or something, and it's going in and adding annotations to some of these applications, they show up as out of sync, and the admin interprets that as something that the user is adding separately. So I'm very suspicious of that, that you would have that many applications that people were doing stuff on, because this is like, most people that adopt Argo CD understand that this is an anti-pattern, that you do not want to do this. Have people modifying Kubernetes directly or changing resources directly in Argo CD. So I suspected that
because you can see that in the status field, right? Like who made the last update? It was made by, or is it management fields? Like it'll tell you what like if it was made, if a change was made by like an, like you said, if it's Kyverno, that process typically will say, "Hey, this change was made by Kyverno," right in the status field from the object, not on Argo CD, but like the actual object.
I thought that was only if you were using server-side apply. Does it work?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Because it has like fields. There's like a fields managed by.
Yeah, managed by. Yeah.
But that's only if you're using server-side apply. And most people aren't yet, so I would think that they probably wouldn't be there. But I kind of thought like, hey, if you think 35% of applications are out of sync, what could be happening, and you're seeing these CPU spikes happening, what could be happening is that you have a controller that's making modifications, and you have auto healing turned on in some way, and Argo CD is constantly fixing them, and it's just only getting to a certain percentage. So you're always seeing the fact that you're always seeing about 35% be out of sync is just an artifact of the fact that it can't keep up with the controller fight that it's doing. Now, they didn't complain about Argo CD being slow, but I would expect it to be slow. So I thought, first thing you should do, throw up a sync window to block automated syncing, and then go and look and see what the final out of sync number is. And certainly if it changed, then you had an auto healing fight going on, and then you should go and look at those individually and understand. I mean, that's a lot. Like 1,500 times 35% is 500 applications, but you should go look at those and see if you can understand that all those differences were really made by users. That's a big problem. You don't want people doing that. And I would honestly revoke access if people are really doing that. But I expect that there's probably some kind of controller fight going on. The other thing they said, OpSed in their response, is, I am thinking of increasing the default reconciliation timeout from 180 to 300 seconds. What do you think? And I thought, if your worker queue depth, like if is so slow that it's not getting everything up to date relatively quickly, so you're seeing these spikes. One of the things we often recommend is increase your reconciliation timeout to like an hour or even several hours, and then just add in enabled the webhooks to trigger sync, so that applications by default will get triggered to sync only when they're modified. Now, if they're using a monorepo, manifest generate paths, really critical here, because otherwise you'll be triggering, if this was all one repository, every repo update is going to trigger everybody to go resync unless you have manifest generate paths set. So that's another kind of optimization to do. But that was something else I was thinking about. But the fact that they said the CPU was spiking, but horizontal pod auto scaling wasn't helping, made me think, okay, you might have specific manifests that take a long time to generate. So maybe you have a really gnarly Helm chart, or maybe you have several repositories that need to be resolved in order to generate these manifests. So that might be another place to look, is like, is it specific applications that are taking a long time to generate, or is it
like the same ones?
Yeah.
Or is it like random ones that make up that 35? Like requires like Evgeny said, like it requires more information. I need more information on this.
Where would you, Yevgeny? You're the best at getting deep in Argo CD. Where would you look?
Not a lot to get deep here. I suppose most probably it's monorepo, because in monorepos we have more problems with locking, lock contention, caching, such things. It's the funny thing, I had reviewed last week 2 bugs with very similar symptoms.
Really?
Yes, really. One not just bugs. It was issues with pull requests that are ready to be applied. That one had a big monorepo with really big monorepo, like with lots of references, like 500,000 references. And because our cache, resolution cache, gets all the references from the repo, this made problems with CPU usage, because
When you say references, do you mean just like objects that it was managing?
References, I don't know, tags, branches, whatever. Just like you have lots of applications with using their own tags, probably. I don't know. But this made it us to go over all the references in the loop, and this was eating the CPU time.
Was it like parameters on each application? Like they had just tons of parameters on each application?
No, it's just lots of applications and lots of references in a repo.
Oh, the repo itself had lots of references to like other repos. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, when
some kind of pathological configuration that bring out just CPU usage up.
So maybe they have like a customized that's referencing another repo, that's referencing another repo, that's referencing another repo. So they have all of these different Git repos to check out and reference in order to resolve that one thing. Or maybe it's a multi-source application with lots of different sources, that kind of thing.
Or like a submodule, like a Git submodule. I've seen weird things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Just lots of automatic processes that create commits with tags, and everything is getting accumulated over time.
Yeah, I saw someone the other day that was using multi-source Helm, and they were referencing like 8 different values files from different repositories in each application to kind of bring in these different values and layers. And that is an example where it's like, okay, this one application would be taking essentially the same resources as 8 applications, because it's doing 8 different repo checkouts to resolve this, to build this one Helm chart. So yeah, that'd be a good example. So in that case, you're saying, Yevgeny, there was actually a bug in the way that Argo CD was handling this, where it was not optimal?
Not exactly bug. It's just a lack of optimization for some scenarios. It's architecture that isn't optimal for some use cases, because most most repos has several references, probably we shouldn't, I would say we shouldn't read and store all the references.
Oh, okay.
Just references that applications use it. It's at most several thousands, not 500,000.
See, this is why you're a good maintainer, Yevgeny, because Christian and I would look at that situation where we'd be like, "Stop doing it that way." But you'll say like, "Oh, okay, let's go
It's
fix the
exactly it, yeah.
optimization so it actually works." Yeah, so that's cool. All right, so I think with this one, we've at least given them some direction. Grafana certainly would be helpful if they would post their Grafana. We would see a lot more maybe quickly, but trying the sync window to make sure it's not an operator running around, seeing if that's what's causing out of sync would be a good one. Reconciliation timeout certainly can go higher using manifest generate pass if it's a monorepo, using webhooks to trigger synchronization. A lot of people don't realize that they should use webhooks to trigger synchronization. I think because maybe they read the GitOps principles and we say like, hey, you have to be pulling these things constantly. There's nothing in the GitOps principles that says you can't use a webhook to speed up the process.
Yeah.
Certainly can.
Need to. Yeah. You probably should. So,
you probably should.
You should, yeah, because you mentioned it earlier, Dan, but it's like the default's 180 seconds. Really, you should set it longer than that and use the webhooks, right, to do an on-demand sync, right?
Yeah.
It's like it shouldn't be the reconciliation loop shouldn't be your sole way of getting changes. Right?
Yeah, you shouldn't disable it ever entirely. You should always expect that webhooks can fail. What's my appetite for how long I want to go with sync not being happening? Maybe that's an hour, maybe it's 2 hours or something. But there's no reason to say that you're not going to use it. Now, something that a lot of people don't know is that application sets have a separate webhook configuration, and that's bitten people in the butt before, where they think that they're like, oh, I set up webhooks configuration trigger for applications, should be fine, not realizing that they have application sets that are going out there and checking out, thousands of repositories every 5 minutes to trigger all their stuff. So that's a whole separate configuration. And maybe now you know why, because we mentioned that it came from Argo Project Labs. It's a separate controller. It's got its own whole configuration to it. So that's part of the trigger here. But I think we've given this person some good stuff to go off. CPU limits we mentioned. Yeah, don't set those. So we've packaged this whole conversation up for you, op alarming service 356, and we will send this onto the comment for you. Hopefully that's helpful and gets you going somewhere, gives you some direction beyond what you got from the rest of the community. And also the community showed up with some good answers as well. I mean, they were pointing out to pause auto sync and see if it resolves concurrency. Kind of this person's getting at the same thing. Some people brought up the CPU limit and said just get rid of that, which you super should do. Server-side apply isn't one we mentioned, but server-side apply, when you have differences that are caused by a controller, ignore differences is the quickest way to resolve it. But server-side apply may be a great option as well, because server-side apply will not show differences that are caused by a controller doing a modification on like an injection webhook. It will cause a diff when it's not off of an injection webhook, but for all others, it would show up. So there's still reasons why you'd want to use ignore differences. But if you want to learn more about server-side apply, we did a great episode on that like 3 weeks ago. So we did a whole deep dive. So go back and listen to that episode if you want to understand all the nuances of server-side apply, why you should use it, why you shouldn't use it, and the benefits thereof. So awesome. We've covered Project Labs. We did the tip. We helped someone from the community hopefully debug their Argo CD instance. Are there any other topics we want to bring up as we get towards the end of the show?
Maybe a word or two about ArgoCon and KubeCon, Dan?
Yeah. we've got ArgoCon coming up in March
21st.
A few weeks. I better get started on the presentation. Yeah.
Soon. So,
Really?
okay. First of all, attend ArgoCon Amsterdam if you can. But many people don't know we are going to be doing the very first ArgoCon in Japan in July, end of July. It's going to be a half-day ArgoCon. So for all of our Japanese listeners, I know that you've all been very anxious that we do one in Japan. So it's coming. Of course, ArgoCon North America will be coming in November. But Amsterdam is going to be the next big one, and we'll have a really killer lineup of speakers again. And Revital, if you're all following us on YouTube or our other social media channels, you will have been getting some shorts that have been promoting some of the different things that will be happening at ArgoCon. So hopefully you're getting all those. But anything else that we need to promote about ArgoCon?
No, I think
Christian's going to be there. Yevgeny's going to be there. Revital,
sure.
me,
Yeah.
hang out with all of us.
Yeah, hopefully we will all be there.
Yeah, we'll be. You'll be able to find us certainly at ArgoCon walking around. We'll also be taking turns at the Argo booth, the project booth
Yep.
in KubeCon.
Is,
In addition
Octopus-
to Octopus
yeah.
booth, Octopus booth.
I was gonna
will
say,
be
is
there.
Octopus having a Jeopardy again? That was fun. I did that one time with you guys, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Of course. Dan
If
will do it.
Revital says of course, then it's happening.
If you're doing Jeopardy, keep me informed, because I definitely would be interested.
we'll
to do
bring
that
you
again.
in.
That was a lot of fun.
We'll bring you in for Jeopardy. That usually we would do that probably at the Octopus booth. So we'll probably do that again. And then, we are having a party with AWS and Octopus Deploy are teaming up to host a party at in KubeCon Amsterdam. So be sure to attend that. That's going to be a good one. Don't want to miss it. And then Christian, you guys have a booth this year as well, don't you?
At the Isovalent booth, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll be at the Isovalent booth if you want to come talk anything Kubernetes, right? Well, I'll be there. You don't have to talk about networking, but just in general, I'll be there. I'll be at the Argo booth as well. So it's I'll be around, right? So if you're in Amsterdam, you're an Argonaut, you'll definitely see me around.
You guys should have Yevgeny come talk about eBPF because he's been doing
there you go.
eBPF stuff with Argo CD
Nice.
to get deep into debugging, which is pretty cool.
So that would be a cool talk. Like if you're gonna want to do an eBPF talk around Argo, definitely give me a nudge, Evgeny.
All right. Cool. Well, with that, I think we've covered it. So thanks everybody for joining this episode of Argo Unpacked. We've got our next episode is coming up.
March 9th.
Okay, March 9th. And what's our topic? Who are we having on?
Oh, Kubernetes with Daniel and Bart.
Oh, we're going to be talking. Yeah, we're going to be talking about, do you even need Kubernetes?
Mm-hmm.
There's been some high profile DHH was talking about, he's like, Kubernetes is a scam, you don't need it. I don't think he said that much. I think that's overstating what he said. I think he said a lot of people don't need it. But there's been this kind of meme that's like, startups are like, oh, this startup, they tried to make Kubernetes and they drowned and they couldn't do anything. All they really needed was a Ruby on Rails script set to auto reload every 15 minutes. That's all they really needed. Was it overkill? So we're going to tackle that topic. And Daniel from LearnCube, Bart from LearnCube is going to be joining us to talk about that. So that'll be a fun discussion.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining another episode of Argo Unpacked. And as always, stay synced.